Welcome to Monday Night Reading. This is an event that I dreamed up because with all my fiction authors I'd work with, I never got to see my nonfiction authors do readings. Fiction authors do them all the time. My nonfiction authors write great stories. Many of them are here. And two of them especially are here, Joy Farrow and Laura Frombach, who are the women of the hour. They wrote Street Smart Safety for Women, Your Guide to Defensive Living. And they wrote that in workshop and retreat and so many different edits, and they kept at it and kept at it. And we couldn't be more proud. This book is already available. Laura Stone will be sharing some links in the chat so that you can get a copy for yourself or someone you know who needs it. And I'm going to tell you, every woman needs it. I'm really not exaggerating. Every woman of any age. I gotta just comment for a second, because am I seeing Liz Long and Deanna sitting next to each other? Oh my gosh. Yes. Love it. Love that so much. I'm gonna take a screenshot of that. All right. So this book, Street Smart Safety for Women, Joy Farrow and Laura Frombach have been working on it for a number of years. This is a true passion project, but this is one of the most useful and transformative books I've ever been a part of. And I can personally say that in the writing of, well, they were writing this and I was working with them on this, I started to make changes in my own life just based on what I was reading. And I'm really, really proud to have them here today. Laura, will you please introduce Joy and Laura?
I would be pleased to do so. Hi, ladies. Joy Farrow is a retired deputy sheriff with 28 years of experience. She worked road patrol in Pompano Beach, Florida, and faced every situation imaginable. Laura's family experienced generations of family violence, and she was in technology for most of her career. Together, Joy and Laura wrote Street Smart Safety for Women to share their experience in the hope that other women could avoid violence and reduce their chances of becoming a crime victim. They have been featured on television, podcast, multiple articles and interviews, including the Daily Mail, PetMD, CBS Las Vegas, NPR, and more. And when not advocating for women's safety the world over, they enjoy the simple things in Greater Orlando, Florida, like dodging alligators and scam artists. And I'll put how to connect with them in the chat. AJ?
Awesome. Is that in your bio, or did Laura write that?
That is a hybrid.
Yeah, Laura likes to play with the bios. It's one of our favorite things.
I like it.
So you know the drill. I always like to ask, okay, who did you write this book for?
We wrote this book for women who want to keep themselves safe and still be a nice person.
Love. And what's your core message to readers?
Your safety intuition is your built-in burglar alarm.
Nice. And what's your promise to readers?
If you read this book and implement its recommendations, you can reduce your chances of becoming a crime victim.
Can you tell these have been on TV a lot lately? Just banging it right out. I love it. I want you're going to share a number of excerpts tonight. Can you set up the first one? What will we be hearing from you?
We will be starting with the introduction to our book. And this is the excerpt and the beginning of the book itself. This is how we start.
Okay, you take it away. Oh, wait. I made a mistake.
Wait.
Everybody, please remember, in Top 3 Book Workshop, in Monday Night Readings, we love to share positive feedback. So if a line resonates with you, if something connects with you or touches you, please put it in the chat and save all critical feedback for another day. All right, now you can go.
Thank you, AJ. The motivational speaker, Tony Robbins, once asked half of his audience, men, raise your hand if you felt unsafe in the last week. Out of the 1,000 or so men in the audience, a few hands went up. Then he asked the other half, ladies, Raise your hand if you felt unsafe in the last week. 1,000 female hands went up. Surprising, only the men in the audience. Every woman in that audience felt unsafe at some point over the period of just 1 week. Yet, the men were surprised. Are you surprised? We aren't either. We would have raised our hands as well. Maybe you would have too. If so, this book is for you. Now, the audience participants weren't attacked within that last week. However, they did perceive a threat of some type. And that week wasn't any different from any other week. No prison breaks had occurred nearby. No serial killer was reported to be on the loose. It was just an ordinary week. Another week in a series of weeks. In other words, women perceive threats to their personal safety almost all the time. There's no way of knowing how many of those audience participants were actually victims of violence at some point in their lives, but it is safe to say that the response was based on some point of reference. The United Nations estimates that 736 million, 30% of women age 15 and older, women across the globe have been subjected to violence at least once in their lifetime. The lives of almost 1 billion women have been shattered because the mental and emotional impact of violence can last a lifetime. We believe that as staggering as those numbers are, they don't reflect reality. We think that they're too low. For one thing, the UN also notes less than 40% of the women who experience violence seek help of any sort, and less than 10% of those seeking help appeal to the police. And as staggering as those numbers are, they are even higher for Black, Latina, Indigenous, and increasingly Asian women in the United States. For another, many women that we've personally spoken with have indicated that they have been the victim of some type of attack or attempted attack in their life. We agree with Angelina Jolie and Chantal Malopia, special advisor to the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who made the same statement within days of each other. Violence against women has become normalized. According to FBI statistics, 77% of violent crime offenders are male. So those who protest, not all men, are technically correct. But 77% definitely points to the source of the issue. Consider if the tables were turned. What if women suddenly began attacking men at the same rate? Or if this violent crime wave of attacks was occurring against any other group of people? There would be an international law enforcement task force dedicated to solving the problem and bringing the perpetrators to justice. It's important that we, as a society, but especially women, understand the true extent of this public health emergency, and we'll address some of that. Because without understanding and acknowledging the actual scope of the crisis, it will continue to be minimized as violence against women has been traditionally dismissed for centuries. One other point we'd like to make right away is that we don't fault all men for aggression against women, nor do we think that all men are out to get women. In fact, almost anyone may find some of our information useful, not only for the women they love, but themselves as well. And we hope that they do. All are welcome here, including all genders and identities. And although we've tried to make our descriptions gender neutral because they do apply to all, there are occasions when the majority of predators are cis men, and the language reflects that. The gist of this book is geared towards cisgender women because, as such, we are taught to think differently. We're trained from infancy to attend to everyone else before we pay attention to ourselves. It's important for women to be aware that this attitude is dangerous to their own personal safety. We can say this with conviction because, well, that's how we ourselves have been raised and conditioned. We're both nice girls who are hardwired since birth to be nice. We're also both aware of the toll that can and has taken on our own safety. It's taken many years for both of us and Joy's law enforcement training to get in there and adjust that wiring. We believe that a large part of the reason that violence against women is normalized is because most men, like those in Tony Robbins' audience, have no idea that this is a global health emergency for women. This includes judicial systems and law enforcement, which is composed, of course, primarily of men. Another contributing element is that many predators don't present themselves in public the way that they do privately. In other words, most men will never see the other side of men that women do, which can lead them to not believe women. This leaves a global systemic failure to protect women and to prosecute perpetrators to the full extent of the law. No one is coming to save us. There is no 911 for this, so we have to save ourselves. What can you do to save yourself? How can you help keep yourself safe so that you don't become one of these statistics? And if you have been a victim, where can you find resources to help you recover? That's what this book is about. We all have intuition. Both of us have backgrounds in violence and are intimately familiar with it, but not as abusers. We belong to separate populations that have developed the ability to immediately react to situations without conscious thought to potentially save our lives. Joy is a retired law enforcement officer, and Laura is a survivor of childhood domestic abuse. These two groups, along with combat military vets, often know what we know without knowing how we know it. This type of perception is often called intuition, knowledge that we seem to instantly have access to without mental processing. But we don't have this awareness because we're extraordinary people. On the contrary, we're regular folk. We both developed this as a result of being ordinary people in extraordinary situations. Neither of us are magical, can predict the future, or conjure lottery numbers, sadly. The intuition we developed is a result of being in life-threatening situations. Intuit or die. However, we believe that every one of us has the same ability because the intuition we're referring to is not a supernatural or emotional superpower. The type that we're talking about is the kind that harnesses your subconscious as it communicates through your intuition. As you'll see shortly, the variety of intuition that we're discussing is biology-based. It is simply accessing the power of your subconscious as it rapidly processes data from your five senses and attends to it. We call it safety intuition. We both have had to learn to pay attention to our subconscious in the form of safety intuition because of our circumstances. But everyone has this ability because every human has senses and a subconscious. The difference is that we have both learned to listen to our own subconscious, regardless of anyone else's opinion. And this is a very important factor for women, as you'll soon find out. It's our observation that women's overriding concern about being so consumed with everyone else's comfort before being aware of their own safety is a false narrative that they tell themselves. It's a belief that we've been told and sold to women, that's been told and sold to women, which then becomes the stories women tell themselves, often in very subtle ways. When our colleague Olivia heard about this book, she commented, "This has happened to me. I can think immediately of some potentially dangerous situations that I have put myself in by trying to be too polite. And in every instance, I knew better. I knew I should get out. But I wound up telling myself stories about not being rude so that I would remain." Olivia readily provided an example. She detailed an instance where she told herself a lot of different stories when she was in a potentially dangerous situation at a rodeo. Here is her story in her own words. "My husband, Tony, and I were staying with friends, and they had invited us to attend the 4th of July rodeo in a small Midwestern town in the USA. I was disturbed at the violence of the rodeo and decided to wait for Tony in the car and read until it was over. I'd been there about 10 minutes, engrossed in my book, when somebody finally knocked on the car as if they were knocking on a door. It was a friend of our friends who we'd met the night before when we'd all had dinner together. I knew that he was a doctor working at the town's medical practice and that he was married with a young daughter. He was probably in his mid-30s, some 20 years younger than me. He said to me, 'It's really hot here. You could come and sit in the medical practice in the cool if you like. It's only a few minutes walk from here. I can take you there. This was 2 days into our big adventure. Tony and I had sold, given, and lent everything we owned in New Zealand and were on our way to live in Spain. Here was another adventure in front of us. I thought this would be more interesting than sitting in the car reading my book. So I said yes. On the way, he started to tell me about his marital troubles. That should have been a red flag. And the medical center was more than a few minutes walk. It was more like 20. Another red flag. But I skated right past them. I was having an adventure, meeting new people, having new experiences. We arrived at the medical center and he unlocked it. He said I could sit in the waiting room or one of the doctor's surgeries where the chairs were more comfortable. I chose the doctor's surgery. I was about to get out my book, but he sat down in another chair and carried on about his marital troubles. I'm a good listener and I went straight into my listening and coaching mode. But as this carried on, I realized I'd got myself into a situation. Tony didn't know where I was. Nobody knew where I was. I was alone in a deserted building with a man I hardly knew. Everybody else was having fun with 4th of July celebrations. I had initially trusted him because he was the friend of a friend and because he was a doctor and he knew I was married. He was 20 years younger than me. Surely he wouldn't try anything. But none of these things meant very much if he had bad intentions. What if Tony decided to leave the rodeo to look for me and went to the car and I wasn't there? He would panic. I went through an internal dialogue. Me, I must text Tony. My inner people pleaser. It will be rude to interrupt this guy. Me, but I must tell Tony where I am. My inner people pleaser. The guy might feel insulted. He might think that you're insinuating you feel unsafe with him. Me, I am feeling unsafe with him. It's imperative that I tell Tony where I am as soon as possible, whether I insult this guy or not, and I need to get out of here. I texted Tony and I said to the guy, I'm going back to the car, and walked out without a problem. I will never know whether this guy had bad intentions or not. What I'm appalled by is that my initial reaction was to ensure that I wasn't rude to the guy, that I was pleasant and polite, that I didn't insult him. My comfort and safety came way down the list. We need to practice being rude, being impolite, so that we are not caught in situations like that. When somebody makes you uncomfortable and you don't speak up and be honest, you're holding on to all that discomfort when they should be the ones who should be feeling uncomfortable. You are under no obligation to allow someone to be comfortable in making you feel uncomfortable. Like Olivia, many nice women rarely consider the implications of being so polite on their own safety until it's often too late. The authors have spoken with so many women that have dozens of stories like Olivia. Chances are pretty good that you know some women who do too. Olivia didn't want to hurt the feelings of a man she barely knew. Many women put their safety at risk because they don't want to even take the chance of hurting the feelings of a stranger. When you believe your safety is at risk, challenge those internal beliefs. When your safety intuition alerts you, it doesn't matter who the potential predator is. Can you think of a time when you challenged those beliefs right away and followed your own safety intuition? Can you remember a time when you didn't? We dare you to immediately challenge those assumptions about being polite all the time, instead of waiting until it may be too late to save yourself.
What a strong open. The chat is on fire. Yes. We need to practice being rude. Imagine that. Oh my gosh. That is so powerful. And you read it so powerfully and beautifully and compelling. I can't wait for you to read the chat. So I want to ask you a couple questions. I know you've heard from so many readers since your book came out. Would you be willing to share some of the responses you've heard? And it's been what, a month?
A month.
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you been hearing?
Some of them were, I want to know what I can do so this doesn't happen to me again. So thanks for this book. This book is very much needed by women. And one that contacted us after a podcast, she was driving. 10 minutes after she stopped, she was accosted at her car window. And she thanked us for the advice she had just heard on the podcast, not 10 minutes before she parked the car. So she was happy about that. And she was able to calmly take care of the situation and knew what to do.
Yeah, it's so funny the things that we'll do just to keep somebody safe. And I don't do any of those things anymore, thanks to your
Good.
book. And small little things too. Like I don't, if I'm in my car and I'm sitting there, because we tend to look at our phones before we drive or things like that, I immediately lock my doors before I do anything and look around. And before that, I didn't do that. Lots of small things, but mostly just to trust myself. So I'm grateful for that. Um, have you had any feedback from your on-air experiences? Like, what kind of feedback have you gotten from those?
Well, as Joy said, that the woman who reported back said immediately, that she had been able to handle the situation. But what's interesting for our on-air experiences is every single female host had a story.
Yeah.
And they wanted to share that story. And some said that they had never shared that story with anyone, including their family. And these are people from a variety of backgrounds and businesses and interests. And every one of them had a story. And like we said, I just read, we think those statistics are too low because almost every woman we have ever spoken with had a story and wanted to tell us the story.
So, I'm so glad this book is out in the world. Oh my gosh. What is one habit you wish all women would change? We've got routines and habits and things we do without thinking. Aside from trusting our intuition, what's one thing you want us to all just don't do that?
I'm going to say your self-preservation over politeness. So think of your safety first.
So do you have an example of, maybe some stuff that we do to be nice that we should just entirely stop doing? Like, for example, maybe we don't have to answer the door to a stranger just because they have a clipboard.
That and putting your car window down just because a stranger wants to talk to you.
Joy's favorite and the woman on the podcast. The other suggestion that we have for women is, we have this technology now. We have Ring doorbells. We have wearable tech and there is a chapter in our book on technology. Let's use the technology for our benefit. You never have to open the door to anyone. You can talk to them on the app. They don't even know whether you're home, whether you're not home, where you are when you're out and about. No matter who you are, no matter how old you are, somebody needs to know where you are all the time. And wearable tech, your phone, the apps on your phone allow you to do that, and can even text somebody when you get someplace safely and you forget to text them. So it's important to use the tech and also communicate.
Right. We also want you to be more persuasion proof, because one of the predator plans is to stop you in your tracks. And excuse me, miss, is one of the politest ways to attack you. And we know people that have been attacked by, oh, what do you need? As soon as they heard, excuse me, miss, they were attacked in some way in a parking lot.
And we just have this thing where we turn around to see what they need, right?
Exactly. And you don't need to stop. If somebody's going to stop you in a parking lot and just yell out, excuse me, miss. Now, you do want to see who it is, and you do want to keep going or take out a defensive tool and have that ready. But you don't have to stop and wait for them to catch up and wonder what they need, because you can help them. So that's something to keep in mind, and it happens a lot.
The other thing is that these are not the olden days. Everybody has a cell phone now. Predators have cell phones. They can call for help from themselves. But because we are trained, we're conditioned to be polite, to be nice, to be helpful, women do not want to leave anyone in peril. And, you know, as I said, we ourselves are nice people. And, you know, we'll call for help for someone, but we're not going to put ourselves in an unsafe situation and respond to somebody who smiles at us on the street. You know, it doesn't mean you can't smile, but, you know, you keep your distance as well.
Too many predators have tried to coerce women to help them buy their car in all different type of situations. And predators come in all types of ages. So just because they're older doesn't mean that they haven't been in prison for years earlier or don't know the system. So, you know, that's another thing to keep in mind, that the age doesn't matter today. 12-year-olds are committing crimes now.
Carjackings.
So carjackings and
And I'll-
robberies, murder.
And I'll also add, con people, shammers, scammers, conners, we talk about that. I mean, those aren't isolated to gender. Anybody can be a sham, scam, or conner. And, you know, it's important to keep that in mind as well. And don't let your guard down just because, you know, a woman comes up to you and wants to talk to you. You know, they may be trying to get money. Now, most violent crimes are committed by men, as we talked about. But, you know, you need to just have a healthy level of confidence about you, and don't, as we say repetitively, don't trust everyone. You can still be a nice person. We want you to be nice. We want kindness in the world. We ourselves are kind people, but we're also very safe people.
I love it. I don't often do this, but I just want to share, just to give you guys a taste. They talk about victimization and trauma in a chapter. They have a whole chapter on, can you even recognize a predator? They have a whole chapter on technology terror. So what's happening in tech that can be a problem for us. They talk about being persuasion proof, which is Joy just began to touch on. Dating the wolf. That's one of my favorite chapters, by the way. They talk about domestic violence. They talk about financial security as a key to safety, which I think is very interesting. They talk about Joy's survival blueprint, sham, scans, and cons, women and weapons. This book is chock full of all the stuff we need to think about. And on that note, I wonder if you can set up the next excerpt for us.
Sure. Yep, let me. This next excerpt is from Chapter 5, Persuasion Proof. Being persuasion proof. A large part of our nice girl social conditioning surrounds being agreeable. In essence, women are not only expected to give to, but to give in to others, no matter who the others may be. This value construct is a powerful form of regulation over not just the behavior of women, but where it all starts, in our minds. In other words, thought control. Many women have been trained since childhood to alter our thinking, attitude, or behavior just because we're told to, even if the resulting thoughts or actions are not in our own best interest. Our conditioning is not unlike the training of an elephant calf. Elephants are among the largest and strongest land animals on Earth, so the only way that humans can control them is to start when they're young. The baby elephant is tied to a tree with a rope around its ankle so it can't escape. The little elephant eventually outgrows the rope and could easily snap it when it grows into adulthood. But because it is conditioned to being tethered as a calf, it gives up seeking freedom for the rest of its life. That same type of mind hijacking has been used on women, effectively kneecapping our self-confidence. And it turns out that self-confidence has a direct correlation on whether or not we feel strong enough to push back when someone wants us to comply. In The Psychology of Fraud, Persuasion, and Scam Techniques, Dr. Martina Dove notes, perhaps the most worrying thing about compliance is that it has been linked to low self-esteem and inferiority, as well as a negative view of self. If we don't have faith in ourselves, and if we look to others for validation, it's an easy sell for someone to position their perspective as a provider of that validation, especially if you've been traumatized. So it's important to realize that nothing short of a brain injury can force you to think the way that someone else wants you to. You are the only one in charge of your mind and your attitude. Even if you are threatened or coerced, you may choose to physically comply, but your thoughts remain your own. The rope can no longer hold you. Dr. Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist who survived 3 years in 4 concentration camps during World War II, wrote in A Man's Search for Meaning, "Everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances, to choose one's own way." The guards took everything from Dr. Frankl, including his hair and his freedom, but they could not penetrate his mind no matter what they did. The conditions in the concentration camps were so horrific that many prisoners succumbed to corruption, bullying, or despair, exactly as the Third Reich intended. But Dr. Frankl did not. He consciously refused to turn his mind over to the Germans. So if a Holocaust victim in a concentration camp can refuse to give the Nazis control over his thoughts and attitudes, any of us could stand firm when someone attempts to play a mind game on us. Frankl was persuasion-proof, even coercion-proof. Keep Dr. Frankl in mind when you feel that someone is trying to influence you to change your mind to do something that may be against your long-term self-interest. You are the only one who ultimately knows what's best for you. No one else possibly can, no matter how they frame themselves. Choose your own way. Criminals are well aware of the social conditioning of women and will try to use it to their advantage. Every day, at least a few of them tried to get over on Joy, seeing her first as female, then as cop. Imagine what would have happened to her if she'd allowed herself to be influenced by every suspect that she encountered. So being persuasion-proof is not only in your best interest overall, it could very well save your life. But because women's thought processes have been affected so subtly and thoroughly that we might not even notice it a lot of the time, we give away our personal autonomy to fulfill a societal form of restriction. How the effects of persuasion can affect your safety. In the dynamics of persuasion, communication, and attitudes in the 21st century, Dr. Richard Perloff notes that persuasion represents a conscious attempt to influence the other party, along with an accompanying awareness that the persuadee has a mental state that is susceptible to change. In other words, since it's a deliberate attempt to change your mind, the persuader is going to be aware of where you stand regarding their request or demand. It's often a personal exchange, not a broadcast or event for whoever is watching or listening. As a result, the persuader can observe whether or not your mind has changed, and if not, continue to apply more pressure. Persuasion can be used for good purposes. Therapists try to persuade their clients to change. Parents try to persuade their children to eat spinach. Recovering people persuade newcomers to stop drinking or doing drugs. On a personal note, be aware of persuasion attempts while dating. Consider the following exchange at the end of the night that we're all familiar with. You, what a great time. Thanks for coming out. Maybe we can do it again soon. Date, what, already? The night has just started. Let's go around the corner for a nightcap. You, no, I really have to get to work early tomorrow. Date, come on, just one more. I have to go in early tomorrow too, but I want to spend time with you more. Come on, what do you say? You, all right, just one more. And scene. You've just let your date know that you can be persuaded and thereby controlled. For too many, this may be the first step on the path to being a domestic abuse victim, because domestic abuse and violence are all about control and domination. We'll discuss this in the following chapters, but for now, be aware that although you initially made your wishes known, they were disregarded, and then you were pressured, and as a result, someone successfully changed your mind. How much do you think that they'll respect your boundaries in the future? Pro tip, they won't. If someone attempts to persuade you to do something against your best interest or that you just don't feel like doing, remember Dr. Frankl. No amount of persuasion or even coercion could convince him to adopt the Nazis' perspective, to turn against his fellow prisoners, or to give in to despair. If he could maintain his mental state in those dire circumstances, so can you. To that end, Dr. Perloff makes an interesting observation. He maintains that because being persuaded involves choice, all persuasion is actually self-persuasion. He notes one of the great myths of persuasion is that persuaders convince us to do things we really don't want to do. They supposedly overwhelm us with so many arguments or such verbal ammunition that we acquiesce. They force us to give in. This overlooks an important point. People persuade themselves to change attitudes or behavior. Communicators provide the arguments. They set up the bait. We make the change or refuse to yield. People persuade themselves. One of the great myths of persuasion is that persuaders convince us to do things we really don't want to do. While on duty at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, Joy was once called by a TSA agent to check out a suspected drug mule. A mule is a person who transports drugs, usually for a cartel. This female mule, female mule, had scanned positive by the TSA metal detector for an item in her private parts. To be clear, TSA is first and foremost concerned with passengers transporting bombs and weapons, so any metal object on a passenger requires an investigation by law enforcement. Suspects are placed in a closed room where they can be questioned in privacy. Joy questioned the suspect. Joy, ma'am, what is the item that you're hiding? The suspect, I don't have anything. I'm not a criminal. Let me go. I'm going to miss my flight. Joy, ma'am, please. We know you have an object under your clothes. Tell me what it is. The bomb squad is on the way, and we're going to find out. Suspect, I don't have anything. I told you. Joy, what is the square object concealed under your clothes in your crotch area? The bomb squad is on the way. If they remove an object, it won't be good. Suspect, oh, that. Somebody gave it to me. It's just a book. Then she casually reached into her pants and retrieved a tinfoil wrapped brick from her intimate area. Joy, a book, huh? How are you going to turn the pages? The brick turned out to be black tar heroin, and the suspect was jailed without the benefit of her reading material. In this exchange, Joy and the suspect had opposing agendas, so each tried to persuade the other to change their mind. They both wanted something from the other person. The suspect wanted Joy to release her, and Joy wanted the woman to admit that she was holding contraband. Obviously, Joy held the advantage of power in this particular instance because she was detaining the suspect. Notice how the suspect still held her ground despite the fact that she knew Joy was aware that she was lying. But when the suspect realized that she was busted and couldn't go any further, she then flipped her script and adopted the technique of minimizing the entire situation. This is very common, so don't be surprised if someone pulls it on you. Mocking, laughing, minimizing, or degrading. All these might be used against you during the whirlwind of persuasive pressure. Shrug them off. They're all just mind shaft methods to get you to doubt yourself and give in. Many suspects tried to convince Joy to doubt herself, and she notes that persuasion is a key skill for criminals. In fact, you basically can't be a predator or con unless you can sell someone on your version of reality. As serial killer Donald Harvey once noted to the FBI, you've got to be able to talk a junkyard dog out of a garbage can.
Oh man, there's so many stories in here, by the way. There's so many stories, y'all. So I gotta ask you, just from an author perspective, you co-wrote this book. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, it could be a little challenging at times with two different point of views. So you pretty much need to use a lot of communication and collaboration.
We agreed on virtually nothing.
Surprise.
Nothing during the writing process. Two opposing points of view. And AJ, this is a plot twist and reveal for you and the writers group. You guys were our judge and jury. We would come to live edit and with our perspective, and we're both are nudging each other under the table. See, oh, look, that resonated with somebody. Oh, see, they didn't like that at all. No, that's not going in the book. This went on for 2 years, 3 years. And
All-
we're still together.
Yes. Partners in authorship and in life.
Right.
So, okay, did not know that. Did not know that you were that was going to be the test. Well, it paid off. It's definitely a remarkable book.
Thank you.
So I love to ask this question, and I want to ask, what's been surprising about your author journey? So when you set out, we have one set of expectations, but what were some of the surprises along the way?
That we are still together.
That was a big
That's
surprise.
one.
I would say the author journey was nothing like I expected.
Mm.
And by that, I mean, I thought I would write it all and just tell Joy what her part was. And surprisingly, her point of view and experience vastly disagreed with the mounds of books that I read. But the other thing that was so surprising, I guess along the way, is the book revealed itself. And I can say that sometimes I would be writing and I would go, oh my gosh, where did that come from? So, you know, in the writers in top 3, you talk about, you know, the trolls. But
Mhm,
I submit that on the other side of the trolls is the muse.
mhm.
And, you know, you also talk about this, AJ, if you plant your butt where your heart and your writing want to be, the muse will come. I have chills just talking about it myself, because I maintain we did not write this book. The muse, someone wanted this book written and helped us along. And I submit that every author, you know, has that experience if they put the work in.
Definitely.
I
Yeah,
totally agree.
we did get information in the funniest places. Sometimes we would talk about taking it a different way, and then something would just show itself, and then we'd say, oh, okay, all right, let's scrap that. Let's go with this.
I'll tell you another surprise along the journey is we spoke with an initial publisher about our book, and she loved it, was on board, except for the domestic violence part.
Mhm.
Didn't want it. And, you know, we spoke with you about this, AJ, didn't want it, wouldn't have it. And we wrestled with that for a year. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, in, out, in, out. It came in and went out. And ultimately, we could not divorce ourselves.
That's right.
And that is probably one of our proudest points in the book. And
That's right.
certainly we were at the domestic violence conference, Fight Against Domestic Violence, where we saw Andrani, and we talked to so many people, so many women who said, as you know, Joy said, I want to know what I need to do so this does not happen to me again.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you bringing that, and I remember thinking, why would you take that out? It's such a clear line from being nice and overriding your safety intuition to ending up in a domestic violence situation. It just seemed like a pretty easy line there. So I'm so glad that you stuck to it and you have the book that you really wanted out in the world. Do you have another excerpt that you want to share?
We have a very short one, actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so this is from Joy's chapter 9, Joy's Survival Blueprint. So this is just a short excerpt, as I said. Over the years of Joy's career, she handled a range of calls from the nonviolent, such as scams, thefts, etc., to the violent, such as sexual assaults, domestic violence, robbery. During that time, women would always ask, what can I do to avoid becoming a victim? We describe the everyday practices that Joy puts to use to maintain her safety. You may have heard some of these guidelines before and have gotten somewhat cavalier about practicing them, but Joy has seen countless women who could have avoided being victimized if they'd utilized these recommendations. But even more important than the actual suggestions, however, the first thing you need to do is adjust your mindset. Just because you haven't been victimized yet doesn't mean that you won't be. You've just been lucky so far, and luck only goes so far. A lot of women in dangerous situations get hung up by what is called normalcy bias, where your brain refuses to accept something because it hasn't seen it before. In other words, your response to a threat is delayed because you're so terrified that you can't even believe it's happening. We want you to make a commitment to yourself right now that you will act immediately on your own behalf if you need to. You'll thank yourself later. Predators count on your lack of awareness. You may be able to avoid many of these potentially dangerous situations by deploying Joy's strategies to keep your vulnerability to a minimum, using your safety intuition, and remaining persuasion-proof.
Thank you. I do want to point out we've been getting a lot of big high level concepts and really important messaging and statistics and good framing and good advice, but there are some dang good riveting stories in here that's they're better than any movie. You're worried what's going to happen. They're very respectful, by the way, of people who might have triggering moments, but man, there's some stories in here, y'all. So you gotta get it for that reason as well. Plus the technology chapter, I think is really fascinating about understanding how insidious it is and widespread, and how many layers of challenges there are related to predators, and how to protect ourselves. I mean, I was just flabbergasted. It's incredible research and information and advice.
Well,
so go ahead.
okay.
So go ahead. No, go ahead, Laura.
As we say, misogyny has weaponized technology, and a lot of people don't understand to the degree that technology online calls for violence against women offline. And, whether it's the anonymity, whether it's social media, whatever it is, that there are, I hate to even say this, but it's appropriate, online mobs calling for violence against women. And we think it's important that women recognize that. And we think it's important, particularly for those who are dating, to recognize that on the dating apps. And we talked about that a lot on some of the podcasts.
Yeah. So every chapter, in my view, is essential. I feel that this is essential reading. If it fits your budget to pick one up, there's a link in the chat. There's also, can you go to your website to learn about donating in larger quantities? Is that where people can go?
Oh, yes. Thank you. We donate books to domestic violence shelters, and there is a link on our website, and your donation goes directly to Porchlight, our book partner, who will send out the books to domestic violence shelters. And while we were at the conference against domestic violence, we got a lot of names and addresses from the shelters and are sending books out for their libraries so that women can understand that it is a pattern, and that they can understand while they're dating how to recognize these patterns before they even get into a relationship, because it's far easier to prevent domestic abuse and violence than it is to be able to put the pieces together.
And what they can do to get out.
Yes. And also young women and just leaving home, going to college, entering the workplace, women who are about to be divorced, women who are traveling. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is just like a stock up thing, right?
Right.
Everybody's got to know. So probably my favorite question I like to ask is, what's the change that you hope to see in the world because this book exists? And I've been waiting, and I'm going to get choked up. I've been waiting years to ask you that question on this night. What is the change you hope to see in the world because this book is in it?
Obviously, we want women to listen to themselves, but I will tell you, as we have talked to women on podcasts and, wherever we've been, women are afraid to read this book. They are afraid of the situations in the world, And the change we want to see is that we want to see people be able to sit with their anxiety, because it can be anxiety provoking to see of all the, predators and online and offline out there, but to sit with their anxiety, because as we talk about at the end of the book, if you can sit through this anxiety and maybe even just digest it in small pieces, if you can learn some of the techniques and the things that Joy has learned, the things that I've learned along the way with our own experiences with violence, you can walk the world differently. You can walk the world with confidence, and you can walk the world in freedom. And if you look at men, the way they walk around in the world, they rarely give a thought to their personal safety. And we want women to walk the world in freedom and be able to do what we want to do without fear of being attacked. Joy?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
And we want women to feel more confident in being less polite in a way, and to use their persuasion proof techniques more, and go on and just do your normal daily living and just feel more confident. Say no and just move on.
I'm so honored to have been part of this process. I have to tell you, we've put in the chat some different ways to get in touch with you. Is there anything you have coming up that you want us to know about, any events or
Yeah, we're continuing to do podcasts. We're continuing to do media. Our big project that's coming up, though, is we have a series of videos planned. And we really want to be able to talk to women and to present to women and to communicate in a way, we're all readers, we're all writers, but to be able to communicate to women our passion that they can walk the world in freedom. And so we have a series of videos coming up to walk through the points in our book at a high level. And in a way, hopefully, that maybe by hearing us discuss it, that might not be quite so frightening.
That's wonderful. So if people want to see those videos, they can connect with you on your social media, which we've been sharing in the chat, and the videos will come up there.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to ask, is the promotion still going on? Because one of our listeners, Thomas, wanted to go donate, but it said the promotion had ended on the 3rd of October.
Oh no.
Our webmaster didn't change it. No, you can.
Okay, so it's still happening, Thomas. and
Yes,
for anybody
actually,
else.
yes, we are putting, and this should change this week, we have an anonymous donor that is going to match our donations to the domestic violence shelters. So for every book donated, there will be a matching book as well.
Okay, how long is that happening?
Till the end of the year.
Okay, so this is a good reason to donate if you can, so that your donation is matched. What a lovely, generous person. All right. Any closing thoughts that you want to share before we close out tonight? Anything you wanted to say, Joy and Laura?
We just have to say thank you to Top 3. Thank you to you, AJ and Laura, because seriously, this book would not have seen the light of day without the support of this group. There were so many issues, so many things that happened along the way, and we almost quit so many times, but you guys enabled us to keep going, and with your support, we were able to get our message out into the world. So for that, we thank you.
And that retreat really meant a lot to us, and it really turned the book around for us too.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we're so thrilled. We're so thrilled to hear it. Everybody, please, I hope you will not just support Joy and Laura by getting a book for yourself or someone who needs it, or both, but I want to remind you that one of the best things you can do to support an author is to leave them an Amazon review. I keep trying to leave my Amazon reviews and it keeps kicking me off. I'm gonna have to get another pseudonym because I think it has me figured out. But keep trying to keep leaving reviews and let them know if if you that you love this book and why through that Amazon review, because that is really helpful to get a sense of certainty for readers who are considering and stumbling upon the book and wondering if it's any good. So you need to have as many reviews as possible. All right, everybody. Thank you both for coming tonight. We were waiting for this day, and I'm so thrilled.
Thank you so much.
us. Thank you. for
Bye,
having
everyone.
us. Bye.
Everyone have a
Thank
good
you.
night.